Okay, so I'm gonna get right into this. This is going to be a kind of character study slash my own thoughts rambling about Kaiba, because I know this isn't Cal, but there's a reason. Because Kaiba is getting hate, which is very much deserved in a way. I'm not saying he is an angel. He is not. He's not an angel, but he's also ain't the devil. He's not the devil's incarnate. He is a person. He is a character, which I don't like the actions, what he does whatsoever. But I also don't think that he is completely evil, but I also don't think he's an angel. People are leaning towards one spectrum or the other, as saying that he's the best thing since sliced bread or that he's the worst thing ever. I see him more as a middle ground, because people are kind of putting him in this, like, either black or white spectrum. They're not putting him in the gray area. I personally try to see characters in the gray area as much as I can, because these characters are characters. They're people, even though they're not necessarily people, you know what I mean. And people have to stop seeing these characters, especially villains or people who do bad things, as being immediately villains as soon as they do something bad. Because there's always a method to it. There is a reason. Even though it's not clear, there is always a reason as to why characters do things. And I think I'm just more able to see that than some people, or some people are just very not aware of it. And especially with Kaiba, I see this, which is why I'm making this video, and why I want to do it for some other characters that are getting hate, because I see that there is a method to what they do. And yeah. So for Kaiba, first I think it's good to touch on what I think could have happened. Let me make this clear. If I say it's canon, it was canon. If I don't say it's canon, don't take it as if it's canon, please. Because what I say is a mix of my own thoughts, what I think could have happened based on how Kaiba acts, but most of it is what I see as canon, what we have seen in the videos. So let's make that clear, please. Don't take what I say as fully canon unless I explicitly say it's canon. Okay? Okay, we're good. So, Kaiba's stuck-upness. It's something a lot of people say. And I see it. I see it as much as everyone else. But people kind of villainize his stuck-upness, which is not okay. None of this is okay behavior. What I'm here to show is that there is a reason to it. Everyone makes it seem like there's no reason to why he does it, and I want to see it more in the gray area and kind of spell it out as a gray area, not as white, not as black, and kind of stay impartial to this for everyone to see. So Kaiba stuck-upness. You have to realize what Kaiba bases his whole identity on. And you can see it more in this episode too, that just released as Kaiba's POV. He personalizes himself as a prince. If you notice, whenever people ask him who he doesn't say that he is Kaiba first, he says he is the prince. He sees himself as this high figure. He personalizes himself by his position. He doesn't see himself, like, if he wasn't a prince, I think he would have a huge identity crisis. Because it's what he bases most of his identity on, being a prince, being in charge, being the main person to be in this responsibility role. And that's why he's so stuck up. I mean, if you're raised in an environment where I honestly believe his parent kept telling him, like, oh, you're better than that person, you're better than that person, they should respect you. Like, you don't have to respect them because they have to respect you. You are a prince. And that's why I think he's so stuck up. Because if you're told your entire life that you are better than everyone else, you're going to start thinking you're better than everyone else. I mean, especially if you're a kid and you're told that. Like, if you're told your entire life, especially by your parent, that you are the best thing since sliced bread, you're going to think you're the best thing since sliced bread because you take your parents' words seriously. So he is not able to get as close to people as he wants to because he's always been taught that he is separate from them. He is better than them. But because he's been told he's better than them, he can't relate to them because he's always taught that they are the lower, you are the higher. You you deserve respect. You don't have to deal with that. So he hasn't known how to deal with that. That's why he's so stuck up. Because he doesn't know what else to do. Like, notice that as soon as Miri starts showing some, friction there's friction there. He doesn't necessarily know how to handle it. He knows all of this. He's not very confrontational, though. So basically, he wants to be he wants to be higher in every situation. Notice, he doesn't want Miri to quit himself. He wants himself to fire Miri. But you would think it doesn't make much of a difference, he's leaving either way. But there is. Because if Miri chose to leave himself, Kaiba would feel as though he got abandoned. But by firing Miri himself, he feels like he chose to be abandoned. He chose his abandonment. He chose to let him go. It was not him, it was Miri. It wasn't his fault. He was in control of it. That's his problem. He feels like he has to be in control of everything and everyone in his life. Because if he's not, then he feels lesser than. And he bases his identity on being a prince, on being better than everyone around him. So if he lets anyone else have a little bit of control over him, he feels inferior. And when he feels inferior, he's not a prince anymore because someone else has more authority than him. And that's a reason for his stuck-upness, which he really has to try to get through. Because as Ashra said, he is a good person. He doesn't do it intending for people to feel bad. He doesn't want people to feel bad. He just wants to feel better than them, which is one of his negative personality traits. But a lot of people in a high position in the real world are like that too. Unless they were in a position when they were smaller, when they were not in that high up position, because they know what it's like. But Kaiba doesn't know what it's like. He doesn't know what it's like to not have anything. To not, like Miri has been in a situation where he and Selma were in the worst circumstances whatsoever. They had nothing. They had to do what they needed to do to get by. But I'm sorry that I keep moving the camera. But Kaiba hasn't been in that. Kaiba has lived in a situation where he was very, very catered to. He was in a good situation his entire life. He doesn't know what it's like to be in that lower position. So therefore he can't relate to it. That's why. He has to learn to start relating to people, to start letting other people have their say, to start letting it be a on the same level relationship with other people. Because he sees himself as higher. He has to stop seeing himself as higher. He is a prince, but he shouldn't have the only say in a relationship. He should not be controlling other people, especially people who aren't staying there against their will. Like Selma and Miri are staying there because Kaiba offered them a place among their ranks, and they're choosing to stay and work for him. But if they're not being treated right, they're gonna leave, and there's nothing he can do about it. And notice, instead of trying to work through the situation, he would rather just let it go. That, I think, is important too to realize. If something doesn't work in his favor, he immediately just says oh, that's gone now. He doesn't take the time to deal with it, which is what a mature king/prince would do. If his citizens were in trouble and they asked for something and they were demanding something, he would ask them what's the matter and say what we can do to fix this issue. So for Miri, his whole thing was why aren't you treating me with respect? You treat me as an object, not as a person. Well, I see you as a person and I treat you with respect. I deserve the same respect. Instead of working with that, he just fired Miri. He would rather put it to the side and get something else than stay and work and deal with the person and their own issues. But everyone else has to stop what they're doing to cater to his own needs. That's what's very toxic about Kaiba. He doesn't realize he's doing it. I think in a way he does, in a way he doesn't. He doesn't, like I said before, it's why he's such a weird character. You don't like what he does, but he's not doing it out of malintent. He's not doing it out of an evil grudge. He's not doing it to hurt people. He's doing it because of what he was raised on how he just is. He's not doing it because he's evil, like most people make it out to be. Another thing that I think is important to note here about Kaiba is that he is very insecure. Even though he puts on a facade like he is very secure in himself, he really isn't. And it's from his need to be on top of everything, to be in control of everything, all of his relationships. It's why he's near his breaking point right now when he starts losing those controls. He stops getting, that's why he's so focused on getting information. It's kind of in a weird way like Inpu, because Kaiba is trying to, like, with Selma and Miri, he always wants to know this person beforehand, know who they are. Nothing is new to him. He doesn't like new things, because when it's a new thing to do with a person or relationship, if he knows everything, he can predict. If he knows everything, he doesn't have to worry about it. But that's the issue, because there are things that you can't be told about a person beforehand, that you have to learn for yourself. But Kaiba doesn't want to do that. That's why Selma and Miri always tell him who people are beforehand, and why they're his main source of information. He likes knowing things beforehand because then he can predict. But with Miri and Selma, he has obviously observed what they are feeling, has observed what they have been going through. He just hasn't said anything. But he doesn't appreciate the one thing that he didn't know about, which was Miri's voice. Miri kept putting on the fake voice for Kaiba. Kaiba didn't notice that, because he never took the time to really get to know Miri, to really see, to really, notice that. Because he's known all the on-the-surface things. He's known all of these other things that he can see visibly, just that's not very obscure. Like, he can just look and notice. But he never took the time to really notice that Miri's voice was off. But he doesn't like that Miri kept that from him, because he doesn't like secrets that are not, he likes to be in the know with a lot of things. If he's not in the know, he feels excluded. He feels like, oh, you didn't tell me this? Like, why didn't you tell me this? I'm supposed to know everything. And that's another issue that he has. The need for knowledge that he is, not everything is his to know. And not every secret is meant to be shared to him. And he has to learn that. That some things are best left for the other person to tell you when they're ready and when they want you to know. For example, Cal. Cal knew about Miri's voice. He let him know, hey, is there something off with your voice? Is this your actual voice? And Miri was uncomfortable with it, visibly, and you can tell he was uncomfortable. He said, when I get to trust you more, I will tell you, and I will let you know about that. And Cal respected that boundary and let him tell him in his own time. If Kaiba noticed that, what would he do? He would force him to tell him against his will, and then he would know, yes, but Miri would be extremely hurt by it, because not everything is Kaiba's to know. Some things you need people to take their time before they tell you, and Kaiba doesn't want to do that. And I know this is not very, orderly. This is just me ranting about him, but these are just a lot of different thoughts about him, about Kaiba in general. So, because a lot of these I just do by comparing Cal's interactions with Miri to Kaiba's interactions with Miri, because you can tell by both. Because Cal notices these things, but he lets Miri tell them at his own pace. He doesn't force it upon him to tell him. Also, Kaiba not giving appreciation to Miri and prioritizing Selma. And I think this is somewhat to do with how he sees them as a means to an end. Let me try to reason through this so this doesn't sound what I think, bad. So, Kaiba, like I said, was probably raised in a royalty environment. without any like bad circumstances. He was just raised in a very, very stable place, and in a very good, wealthy place where he was really respected, where he was held highly, where he was coddled too. Every need he needed, he got. That is a very bad household, though, because that also means you don't get reprimanded. You don't get told what is wrong, what is right. You're just always right all the time. It's never your fault because you're the prince. And now that's really catching up to him, because Miri and Selma see him as a comrade in a way. They see them as like a bond, like a friendship, like a relationship kind of bond. Kaiba doesn't see them that way. He sees them as servants. He doesn't see them as people. He knows they're people, but he doesn't think that it's ever his fault. It's because he put the burden of teaching. For example, the whole thing with Miri, like teaching Kaiba about fighting. He puts the blame on Miri because it is your job to teach me how to fight. And you didn't teach me well, so therefore it must be you. I did not win against them, so therefore it's your fault, not mine. Which is wrong to assume. But he was always told that he was never in the wrong. It was always the other person that was in the wrong, not him. So why do you expect him now to think randomly, oh, it's my own fault, not yours? Because he's insecure. He doesn't want to say that it was his fault because he's so insecure. He's so insecure that he needs to get information about people beforehand before he meets them. Because if he doesn't know, he gets anxious about it. He's curious about it, but he's also anxious about it because it's someone he doesn't know. He can't know about them. And it makes him nervous because he's never known how to handle it. If he knows beforehand the people, he doesn't have to be anxious about it. He doesn't have to be insecure. And it's why he respects people based off of their position. So, for example, he won't yell at Cal. He won't yell at Inpu. He never does. He's very nice to them. He's very kind. He's very proper. But that's because he's talking to other royalty, basically. Because remember, the Egyptian pantheon, you are considered royalty by being the child of an Egyptian god, / being a reincarnation of them. You are royalty. And he was always taught to be kind and be proper to royalty. Plus, Inpu is also pharaoh, and Kaiba is prince. He is in a lower position than Inpu, which is why he shows him respect. If he was lower than him, he would not, but he is. And he's also considered royalty. Miri and Selma are his servants, so he talks down on them like they're servants because of their position. He treats people the way that their position should be treated, not as people on the same level. If he saw Miri and Selma as his friends and not just as servants, he wouldn't be treating them this way. He would be treating them as friends. Like if they were royalty, he would be treating them so much more differently because of their position. But he was always taught to treat people based on their position. So why wouldn't he go and reprimand them for doing a bad job? They're servants. They're lower than him. Therefore, they should be reprimanded. They should be, based on what he was in the environment with. Trying to think. What else? Trying to think. Oh. So this is more headcanon and less of, like, actual canon, I would think. But it seems like Kaiba was, his issue when it comes to relationships in general. When it comes to, like, friendships, when it comes to emotional things. He's not that strong in that regard. He's very much like Inpu in Season 2. He was very logical. He knew everything by the book. He knew all the books. He knew all the knowledge. But he didn't know how to react to emotional things in the moment. That's similar to Kaiba. Because I really think that as a kid, before all this, he was very curious. He is basically a cat person. He was probably extremely curious, extremely outgoing, extremely, he felt like he was capable of doing things, anything he put his mind to. But being in watching the eyes of a parent who's very overprotective, very overbearing, getting placed with all this responsibility and being told that you don't have to do anything, they are in charge of that. You don't have to do a thing. It really dampened his personality. His curiosity turned more into, if I am curious and I'm wrong, then I get reprimanded. And I can't be wrong. So therefore, if I want to be curious about something, it has to be like I have to have some knowledge of it. Like he's more cautious now than he used to be. He's very sheltered. And his I can do everything personality has turned more into this twisted version of it, where he feels like he shouldn't have to do anything because everyone else can do it for him. And he doesn't have to. If he doesn't have to, he shouldn't need to. And it's turned more into a big ego, per se. He felt like he could do everything, and he could do everything. He probably felt more independent, but he was taught not to be. He was taught to be codependent on everyone around him, that he should not have to do things on his own. It should be with other people. Very, very codependent, which dampened his independence, which made him unable to be independent anymore. And if what Solus was saying was right, he was very kept away from everyone else because of his position. So he was only talking to people who were either his mom or people lower than him. And if he showed any kindness to people who were below him, I have a feeling he would be reprimanded for that. Like, why are you being nice to a servant? It's the servant. It's not anyone who should be gaining your respect. Like, you should not feel like you have to gain their respect. It's their job to gain your respect, not the other way around. So he was taught not to respect people by his circumstance. If they're lower than you, you don't treat them with respect because they don't deserve the respect. And because they're servants, I have a feeling if Kaiba did anything wrong, he was taught, even if it's your fault, you don't say it's your fault. You say it's someone else's fault because they're lower than you. You could put the blame on them. They're not you. It's never your fault. And if it ever is your fault, it is always someone else's. You put the blame on someone else. It's never you. And that really did something to his ego, as you can see. It's the result of what happens when you're in a very royal, very proper household that expects a lot of you. Expects you to act a certain way, be a certain way, and to not grow real attachments to people. It's why he's very materialistic. His parents were probably very materialistic because of his position. It's why he was with Moors for so long. Because with Moors, he did not really know much about him. But Moors seemed to care about him on the surface for what he could do for him. But that's something Kaiba knew how to he doesn't know what to do emotionally to please people. He knows what to do when it comes to physical things. If someone wants just a little bit of money, if someone just wants a little bit of time, if someone just wants a little bit of your body, then go ahead. I can do that. I can do that in an instant. I have that. I know how to give you that. Since he's materialistic, he doesn't know what to do emotionally, he knows what to do physically. Which is why he was with Morse for so long. Why he mistook that toxic relationship for something that was real. Because he doesn't know what to actually do in a real relationship. As seen from Ashura. Because with Ashura, he was shown true kindness because Ashura took him for who he was, his personality. He could give that to him. He was him. But he didn't want to see this other fake personality. He wanted to see him for him. And that's when Kaiba started to realize how this materialistic thing is bad. And how Moors, he didn't expect Moors to just dump him on the spot. Because he couldn't see that that was manipulative. Because it made him even more confused, actually. Because he's like, I gave you everything you needed, everything you wanted. And yet you're dumping me. Why is that a thing? It's a very toxic codependency. And he was looking for just a slight bit of something that he could see as a relationship that wasn't a relationship. Like I said before, People in toxic environments usually float towards toxic partners. It's never the other way around because they don't know about it. They don't know what it's like to not be in a toxic environment. And by him saying no to Moors, he felt very, like, for example, like, he felt very vulnerable. He felt like he was used because Morris told it to him upright that this is why I was with you. It was for your things, not for you. For what you can do, not for who you are. Very materialistic as well. They both gave themselves gifts, which is okay, but the reason they were given gifts was as another way of affection. The only way of affection. Through things, not through personality, not through emotional. Because they both don't know what to do about that. They're both... Morris isn't emotionally vulnerable because of all that thing. I will get into that at another point. Kaiba is not emotionally vulnerable because he doesn't know how to deal with his emotions. He doesn't know what to do with them. He was told kind of just to not. Like, just not. Like, your emotions don't matter. It's what you can do for people. Like, for example, Moore's bolstered his ego, and that's what he needs because he's secretly insecure. When he's insecure, if he can do something, pay for that. Pay for a bolstered ego. For what Morris told him, for the respect that he needed, he could pay for that. He thinks that materials can pay for his own insecurity, which they can't. He was trying to find something to fulfill himself through materialistic things. And that's what Miri calls out. By putting down the scythe and saying he's leaving, and by stating this, and Kaiba's like, you're going to like throw away the thing I gave you? And he's like, yeah, because you care more about the thing than me. And he's true. He is right in that point. Because he cares more about the gifts he gives to people than the actual people. He's like, if you get anything from me, that's a lot to ask. Because you are a servant, why aren't you keeping it? Because you are a servant. Because he even says, as he's saying, like, you can't live without me. Like, I gave you everything. I gave you all these things. I gave you. Not you are my friend, not I love you, not I care about you. I gave you materials. Just like what he's been doing this entire time. Materials. Your use. He's like Moore's, just he doesn't do it intentionally. And that's why Ashura keeps saying, you're not a bad person, you just have bad habits. You just were raised in a bad environment, you're not bad in self. But if Kaiba does not get reprimanded, he's going to develop into that bad person. He's going to develop into a Moore's type character. Not exactly, but in a way. He's going to develop into that if he's not reprimanded. Which is why I hate the people who are saying that Kaiba should not be getting reprimanded for this. Kaiba should be coddled. You're being like his parents. He has to be told he's wrong. He has to be told he's doing the wrong thing. Because if he's not going to develop. He's not going to grow. Like Ashura, he doesn't want to change Kaiba's personality itself. He just wants him to become a better person. A lot of people, when they're told to develop, to become a better person, think that means that the person doesn't like them for them. And that's not true. The truth is that they want to try to help you be better in the aspects of your personality that are very toxic, that are negative, that you have not been taught are wrong, and help you. That is a true relationship, trying to better both sides. Because no one is perfect. No one is perfect. But with Kaiba, he was just never reprimanded, so he doesn't know how to react to being reprimanded. This is his whole life being turned on its head. All he's been taught, being turned on its head. Because his authority, his position, isn't doing shit for him now. It doesn't matter that he's a prince. People have emotions. People want to be treated the way they want to be treated. And if he keeps thinking he's better than everyone else, he's not going to be able to help anything when it comes to his relationships. His position can't do anything. And that's what he has to start to realize, that no matter what position you're in, you're still a person, they're still a person, and they deserve to be treated as a person. But because of this, I think it's bad for people to say he is the worst, because he isn't. There are people who are a lot worse than Kaiba, who do this intentionally, who don't do it without meaning to. They do it on purpose. Mors has obviously done what he did to Kaiba on purpose. He didn't do it unintentionally. He knew what he was doing, and he knew it would hurt Kaiba. And he was okay with that. He was happy with that. That's what you call not okay. That's what you call more of the darker kind of gray. Yes, you have resentment. Yes, you have a grudge. But that doesn't mean you go and make someone hurt emotionally and be happy about it. That's not how it works. This is my thoughts, my own thoughts on Kaiba. And I really hope that we get some more of his own development in this regard. Like, to his stuck-upness, to his insecurity, him actually taking the time to think about that, to think that his position is not everything in his life. People like him for his personality, for himself, not just his position, not just his things, but for him. And that he has to start putting his relationships over his things, over his pride, and start to see other people as people, not as things to get what he wants, not as people lower than him, but as people, as friends. Not for what they can do for him, not for what they can give, just for the relationship emotionally that he craves but doesn't know how to achieve. I hope and pray that we get that. And yeah, that's really it. I just wanted to go ranting about Kaiba for a bit. I just felt like wanting to. So yeah, see y'all.